And welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Locker Room. I'm Gabe Farias.
And I'm Johnny Walker.
And this week we're going to be talking about whether or not San Antonio, specifically downtown, is the right location for a minor league stadium. Also, we're going to be visiting with Anthony Beverly, former John Jay and SMU Pony Express standout.
And finally, we'll be revisiting the hot topic of paying college athletes. All that and more this week on Inside the Locker Room.
And welcome back to this week's edition of Inside the Locker Room. Our first segment, we're going to be talking about minor league baseball here in San Antonio, Texas. Johnny, specifically, the phrase I love the most, pitchers and catchers are reporting. They are in, they are getting ready. Of course, the big story here in the state of Texas was the Houston Astros winning their first ever World Series last year. Wonderful, tremendous synergy when you talk about baseball. San Antonio is a big baseball town. The San Antonio Missions, San Antonio Dodgers, San Antonio Brewers,
great
a
history.
big part of the history. They went from B.J. Keefe at St. Mary's to a big upgrade when they built Wolf Stadium back several years ago. Right. But in 2019, the AA franchise is moving to Amarillo. We're getting a AAA franchise. We all know that Wolf Stadium is a subpar facility when you're talking about AAA baseball. We need a new stadium. The talk is for one to go downtown. Is that the right move?
I think it's a great move. I love baseball. No, of course, I played minor league baseball, so I love having a downtown stadium. I think it just adds to the ambiance.
Sure.
A lot of the times when I was playing baseball and we traveled, anytime you had a stadium downtown, it was just a beautiful place. It's where a stadium needs to be. But I would say that if San Antonio ever wants to have any aspirations of getting a Major League Baseball team, you have to come out and support. You've got to show the support for a AAA franchise. I think having that AAA franchise come down, I think it's a great opportunity for San Antonio to take the next step in trying to get an opportunity to get a Major League Baseball team.
A few years ago, we UIW, I was the voice of the UIW football Cardinals. We went and played against UTEP.
Okay.
We went to downtown Texas, El Paso.
Yes.
They have that beautiful new state-of-the-art minor league stadium. The synergy that it brought to that community is phenomenal. I think you and I are both going to agree. The right place for a new stadium is downtown San Antonio. But should it be paid for or subsidized by taxpayer dollars? My answer is unequivocally yes. What is your answer?
Everyone has an issue when it comes to that. And I think, again, when you bring in a minor league franchise or any professional franchise for that matter, it's an opportunity for the city to bring in money, bring in resources, because it brings in jobs. There are going to be people who are going to be working not just on the baseball team, but outside, promoting and all the other things that go along with bringing in a baseball franchise. So I think it's a great opportunity to make more money and also do some things to spruce up downtown. Because I think that there'll be some things that'll be done on the exterior outside of the stadium that's going to be nice as well. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I don't think there should be any issues with where the money should come from. I think people will support that.
And I think when you have those types of downtown stadiums, what everybody wants, what every citizen, whatever community member, whatever stakeholder wants, is to create this walkable community. And I think these kinds of baseball stadiums, it's not just a stadium that comes in. It's the shops, it's the restaurants,
everything
it's the
that comes
hotels. I think it will make San Antonio downtown a much better place.
I can see it. I can just see it.
Can you see it?
I can see it.
Really?
I can see it. No, they actually had an artist rendition of what they thought the ideal stadium would look like. And I thought it was beautiful. I think it's going to be a great fix for San Antonio. I think it's going to help take care of that itch that we have for bringing more professional franchises here into San Antonio. And again, like I said, if we want to ever be able to get to another major professional franchise here in San Antonio, we're definitely going to have to support it.
Okay. We agree on all that.
Okay.
You and I, we got butterflies flying around our heads right now because this is one of the few times where we absolutely unequivocally agree on,
no question.
on the premise of this subject.
Yeah.
I want you to put your politician hat on.
Okay.
And I want you to tell me, what's the message do we take to voters? What's the message that those that are at, because it's going to ultimately come down to a referendum. People are going to have to vote and say, yes, take a bit of my money that I use to pay for groceries or that I pay for gas to build a stadium that I could care less about. What's the message to those voters? Man, am I putting you on the top, on the spot or what?
Man, Well, again, like I said, I think it's something, you got to look at the overall picture. It's something that we want. And that'd be almost like saying, you know what, you want to take our San Antonio Spurs away? You know, we have an opportunity to try to bring in another professional franchise. And I think it's a great opportunity for San Antonio. Not everybody's going to like it. We know that.
Yeah.
I said, but I think ultimately, when you look at the value, when you look at whatever it's going to bring, the dynamics, you know, a new stadium, some of the different things it's going to bring, I think ultimately, the overall picture, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for San Antonio.
So you're saying the message to the voters is you need to vote for this because this is going to make San Antonio
Better.
a better place.
It's a better place. Absolutely.
Okay. I'm not quite sure I agree with that. Of course, I come from the world of politics, and when you look at this, this is going to be a down to the wire vote. This is going to be and I don't think you're going to appeal to the 50% that's going to not want this. You need to appeal to that 50% that sees the bigger picture. Because really, at the end of the day,
Gabe,
you're looking for 50 plus one vote.
Well, Gabe, honestly, you got to look at it. If you think that the facility is just going to be for baseball, it's not. I mean, I'm sure it'll be incorporated in a lot of the other things that we do in San Antonio. Fiesta, there'll be college teams that'll want to come play. We'll probably have some professional teams that we have. Usually we have the Rangers and the Astros or something.
Yeah.
So there'll be an opportunity for them to have a facility to come play doing their little tours that they do. So it's a lot more than just that.
See, now you're talking. You're saying let's create a community asset.
Yes, it's going to be incorporated in that. I mean, so I think that there's a lot more benefit out of having the stadium, having it here, and there's going to be a lot more that we'll be able to get out of it. So, you know, it's not just. I think people are just looking at it just as a, you know, the AAA franchise baseball stadium. No, it's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a part of the city of San Antonio.
Got a couple of minutes left in this segment. Let me ask you this: we build this stadium.
Yes.
AAA comes to San Antonio. Is San Antonio a viable place for a Major League Baseball team? I know the talk right now is Major League Soccer.
Right.
I'm a terrible soccer player. Can you tell? Could you tell? Really, you don't look at me as a guy that's you're about to say, man, you were a terrible football player and a terrible baseball player. I think the progression for us professionally is for Major League Baseball. Do you think that's something San Antonio has a chance at?
I do believe so, and I think that definitely coming in and supporting a AAA franchise is definitely going to get us going in the right direction. We're definitely going to have to be able to do that. And it's one of those things, it's one step at a time. I think when you go to those boards and you're talking to them, they got to see that this is a place that we want to invest in having a professional franchise here. And I think this getting a AAA franchise here, a new stadium, is getting us going in that right direction.
You played AA baseball. Did you ever play AAA baseball? Or
No, I didn't play AAA. No.
So you've experienced a lot of different AA
Stadiums,
stadiums.
atmosphere, right.
Where does Wolf rank? Is it ready? Is it time for Wolf for a major upgrade?
Yes, you definitely have to do that. Yeah, now don't get me wrong. I think it's a great stadium. I've gotten the opportunity to play one after the fact, after I played. Great stadium.
Just couldn't give it up, could you? You just couldn't give it up.
The thing is that once you're trying to get to the major league level, and you're trying to show your city off as trying to get to that, you're going to have to be able to invest. You got to invest. Yeah. And I think getting a major stadium and putting it downtown, again, I think that's the right step. That's the right direction to go to be able to be in the conversation. Because still, just get in the conversation of having a major league franchise, baseball franchise here.
You know what? I think we're going to agree on this, man.
That's a good one.
All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be visiting with Anthony Beverly, former John Jay and SMU standout, when Inside the Locker Room returns in a moment.
Planning the right amount of food is hard. The Guestimator makes it easy. Just tell it who's coming and what's for dinner. Then it tells you how much to make. And yes, it even plans for leftovers. Try it at SaveTheFood.com.
Nothing to do this week? Don't miss another event. Go to blacksinsanantonio.com for our event calendar. The home of the largest business directory in San Antonio with an African-American focus. Sign up today for our weekly e-blast and text message alerts. Help us make this a better community. Connect, empower, grow.
And welcome back to this segment of Inside the Locker Room. Gabe Funny, Johnny Walker, joined by our first guest.
Yes.
How honored can this gentleman be?
Yeah.
And one thing I love about this also is, of the three of us, I'm still the most talented and best looking guy of the three of us.
Well, you know that happens.
Yeah, right. Anthony Beverly, forward John Jay,
Hello.
SMU standout. Thank you so very much for taking the time to
Absolutely.
Inside the Locker Room.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I had to stay right off the bat, because I'm going to tell you, Gabe.
You're not going to start this SMU UT thing already.
It goes beyond that. I'm telling you. Now, I'm a Holmes High School. Holmes
that's
Husky.
right.
See, and this is John J. Mustang. So I'm telling you, to be able to get us to sit this close to each other on camera is a heck of a feat. So you did a great job, first off, doing that.
First question for you. Do you have a bigger problem with this guy being a Husky or being a Longhorn?
That's interesting.
That's a good question, isn't it?
Well, my son goes to UT.
Yes.
So
Yes. He knows.
So does your money.
He's accepted in a sense
Man,
as a UT Longhorn.
The
and
University
he's
of Texas.
accepted as a Holmes Husky because after playing against some of his friends that I'm a little bit older than Johnny, so after playing against some of his comrades, we become friends. So we have mutual respect after the game.
Yeah.
During the game, not at all.
No, we didn't.
Couldn't stand one another.
Not at all. No,
But later on, you realize that they were trying to get out there and do their job. We were just trying to do our job. The only thing different was the uniform. So it's all good.
Yeah.
You and I can, the three of us, we can have a conversation for hours just on what you did at Jay, what you did over at SMU. But talk about your time at John Jay, because it was phenomenal. You played for some great teams over in Mustang Land.
John Jay was good. It was a good time. Had some amazing athletes, and so that's what, as far as my eyes are concerned, makes the big difference. And when you have pretty much early on, you have Thomas Lott, Billy Taylor. So that's a foundation laid at John Jay. So when you come in afterward, you just kind of keep doing the same thing. Sure. So we have some really good athletes, a lot of times good coaches, sometimes not so great coaches. But when you have a formula that's kind of working, just keep it going. Just build on the success that was previously there and just keep it going.
No, you brought up a very interesting point when you talked about coaching and the success you had. I was always under the impression that John Jay had a lot of talent.
Absolutely.
You guys had some incredible talent.
Yep.
To be at such a, I don't want to say it was a big school, but to have as much talent as you had, especially growing up in that area, why didn't you think you guys were able to win state or go to state or get the opportunity to play in state championships?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that. But if I
There was
look
a
back,
combination of different things. Do you think coaching was really one of the reasons why you weren't able to for the Mustangs to be able to go and play for championships or have the opportunity to? Because I know we did at Holmes. I'm just saying.
You did well. You were fortunate. the ball fell the right way, which happens sometimes.
Boy, that Jay Holmes thing, that is
It's
the
all
right
good.
thing.
Yeah, it's all good. I say with Johnny a lot nowadays, and it's all good. But back then you just, you would think that things would fall your way, and if at that time one team left out of district.
That's right.
Nowadays it's four teams go out of district, so it does make a
Right.
difference.
Yeah.
So my freshman, sophomore, and junior year, J1 district, not a problem. My senior year, we did not. Only one team goes.
Right.
So the negative back then is how it doesn't matter. It really didn't matter how great you were. If things didn't work out that one game, you aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, that's
so nowadays you can make mistakes, get in as a fourth seed, and still make it to a state championship.
Yeah, that is true.
So you didn't have that margin of error back then. So we didn't show up, at the right game, so we didn't go anywhere.
Right.
And that happened my senior year. The other 3 years, we did a little bit better. So it's just nowadays a little bit more flexible, a little bit easier to make it at least into the playoffs.
I'm guessing that this year, because we know Jay's had some issues in the paper here and really in the media over the last couple of years. Yeah. I'm sure you had a big smile on your face to see that team overcome a lot of that adversity and make the playoffs for the first time in years in football.
Well, it was good. It was really good because actually I talked to some of the people at John Jay about that because it was a big issue. Yeah. And some schools in Northside get some negative press, and it kind of falls in for an extended period of time. So when something positive happens, you definitely try to build on that. And so that was one of the good things. At least Jay finally made it to the playoffs. It's been many years, like you said, so that was a highlight.
Good step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
I want to dive right into your time at SMU. You got there, you graduated in '81. You go to SMU. You get hurt your first year, but your sophomore year, your medical redshirt freshman year, I guess is what it is. You guys, you're a part of that incredible team with Craig James and Eric Dickerson and the Pony Express. You're a big part of the defense. You guys go 11-0-1, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Your only ties to Arkansas. Talk about that special season.
That was good.
Yeah.
It was good. Once again, things fall into place. And when things fall into place, ball bounces the correct way, life's good. So what I said earlier about people coming together in high school, it was the same way at SMU. I felt I was a piece of the puzzle, and that was it. You know, I did my job, and back then and currently, if you do your job, what you need to do, don't make too many mistakes, you do well. And playing with, you know, amazing athletes like Eric Dickerson and Craig James on the offensive side, and a guy named Michael Carter on the defensive side, you know, we were good. SMU was really good, had a really strong team. I think could have competed with anybody back then. I think we could have competed with anyone currently. So it was a good time. It was, and it's just, once again, puzzle came together with the right pieces.
So is there anything that stands out during your time at SMU that you can remember? Or I know that there may be some difficulties that came up later on toward your career at SMU. You know, what was something that you remember that this kind of didn't work out for you? You kind of talk about the ball falling in the right place.
Oh, it didn't work out?
Yeah, it didn't work out.
Oh, well, freshman year, breaking my leg. I was freshman year, get there, and you're excited as a player to come there. You know, you hope you're going to make a little bit of a difference as a freshman. Some, if any, impact. And so I was playing, and that was nice as a freshman, running down on a kickoff, and then ended up, well, I didn't break my leg during the game, but some guy hit me on the leg. And I finished playing that game, went to halftime, leg was hurting or whatever. And after the game, leg still hurting. But as a freshman, as you probably know, probably remember, they're concerned they don't know what your heart's like as a freshman. So when you tell them my leg is painful, they just say brush it off, keep going or whatever. So Monday we went through drill, or Sunday we just ran some sprints or whatever, kind of cooled down. Monday went through drills, shoulder pads, helmets or whatever, nothing, no big deal. Tuesday came about and we were just going through some drills. And when we went to wrap somebody up on defense, you know, just tackling drill was no big deal. But when I went down to come up and wrap the guy up,
Something was wrong.
well, my leg snapped.
That's what
It snapped.
That was it.
It broke
Yeah,
at
that
that
was
point.
it. Okay.
And I didn't know my leg had broke at that point until
Right.
I got up. When I started walking, my leg was clicking back and forth.
Wow.
So that's the point where I knew it was broken. So when you get there and you're in college and you hope you're going to make a difference to a team and all of a sudden your leg breaks,
Right.
it's kind of devastating. You know, you just wanted to be a part of that puzzle once again. And now you're an outsider.
Right.
So the rest of the season, I'm just watching football games. That's all I could do. So
Right.
that was, you know, kind of a low point. But I mean, I did what I could to make the best of it by working out pretty hard after my leg had healed. But that was a low point when you're in college trying to make hopefully somewhat of a difference.
Well, you had a fantastic career at Jay. You had a fantastic career at SMU. You went on to the NFL. I know we didn't get the chance to touch on that, but you got time to stick around for a little bit because we got one more
Absolutely.
segment. We'd love to talk to you, and it's a little
Absolutely.
sensitive. It's and we're talking about recruiting. We're talking about paying college athletes. You were there during the, you know, Pony Express time.
Right.
We may have your input and insight on a few things
You might.
in the next segment.
You might.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, more with Anthony Beverly and Johnny Walker, Gabe Fadias on Inside the Locker Room.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation.
America, let's do lunch.
Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
All right, welcome back to Inside the Locker Room. Gabe Fadias, Johnny Walker, and our special guest, Anthony Beverly. You know, Johnny, we were going to talk about paying college athletes, and we're still going to talk about that,
Yes.
but we've got a great guest here.
Yeah,
and we've got a guest that has obviously done a lot, especially in his time at SMU. So we're going to continue with that conversation right now, and I know you had some questions you wanted to ask him. So.
Coaching change. You had a coaching change at SMU. How did
yeah.
that coaching change affect you and the way your career finished at SMU?
How much time do we have?
And of course, just to set the stage, you're talking about going from Ron Meyer.
Yes,
who
you're going
was
from Ron
a
Meyer to
very
your new
personal
coaching
guy
change.
to Coach Collins,
To Coach
who came
Collins,
in
who
from,
you know, you had a coaching
Southern
change.
Miss.
Right.
Absolutely. Significant. It is like night and day. Significant difference. Ron Meyer, don't know how much you know of him or about him, but very passionate, energetic,
Right.
open door policy, laid back in a sense, kind of just, he knew he had something good at SMU. He ends up leaving my freshman year, the year I broke my leg. He ends up leaving that year and going to the pros. So then we get this guy from Southern Mississippi, and I have chatted with you about this previously. His name's Bobby Collins, and he came from Southern Miss. And it changed. It changed. It
So you
changed the
think the
morale.
culture-
It changed the mindset. It changed everything. The only thing that they did for me that I saw was moving from inside linebacker to outside. So they saw something in me in that sense. So I give them credit for that because I did relatively well on the outside. Outside of that, the way they treated athletes, the way they treated people, the way they treated women,
The way they treated women.
they were Southern Mississippi.
Really?
That's what I can let you know. It's just a whole different mindset. So then Ron Meyer recruited certain people for him. So when another coach comes in, the personalities don't always meld with that new coach. And talking to many athletes back then and currently, there wasn't a good fit. You had athletes, amazing athletes still there at the time doing some amazing things. We did really well on the field. But then just the mindset of those coaches and what they kind of created as far as an environment, it wasn't positive.
So going into your junior year, you were first team or All-American. You're an All-American linebacker at SMU. Tell us about what happened, an incident that happened on the football field, addressing the new coach that you had at SMU.
This was during spring ball.
Spring ball.
So at spring ball, I talked to the coaches previously and didn't have transportation to get to practice. So I told them about that. So one of the players came to get me to go to practice, and we ended up getting back late. And we were dressing out. And as I'm dressing out, the players are going into the field. So the only thing that I missed, dressed out, I missed a morning meeting, and that basically is to tell you what we're going to do that day. And this was a Saturday, so I missed that morning meeting, got out to the field, started stretching with the other players. And as we're stretching or whatever, that goes on, excuse me, then you go down to your team. Me playing outside linebacker, me and all the outside linebackers are together. Everything's fine, going through drills, and that's all good. Once you go through those drills, then you get more defense involved, and eventually you get down to team defense. And by the time we got to team defense, the coach is telling me, well, he said, Beverly, you need to go down the other end. And I'm thinking, well, okay, that's a little different. And I didn't know what he was referring to because I'd never gone down to the other end. And the other team would be normally the third and fourth team defense goes down to deal with the first and second team.
Basically,
First and second team offense. So they said go down there, and I hadn't been down there since my freshman year, since prior to breaking my leg. And I went down there and just kind of stood around, and one of the guys asked me, his name's David Addison, and he's looking at me and said, what are you doing down here? Because he's on first and second team offense. And I said, I have no idea. I don't know what's going on. And he kept asking me, and I said, dude, I have no idea. They just sent me down here to run scout team. And he said, man, you've never been down here before? And I said, yeah, you're right. And so I just felt, something, once again, wasn't right with the individuals there telling you to do these things. So I ended up leaving the field, left.
So you
and went
walked
to
off. You walked off the field.
I left that practice field during spring ball at SMU and went to the locker room. And then Bobby Collins comes in a few minutes after that. The head coach comes in and says, hey, what are you doing? And I said, I don't think whatever you're trying to do is right. He said, you need to get back on the field. I said, I'm not going. Wow. He said, you need to get back on the field. I said, let's talk about it now. And he said, no, we'll talk about it later. And he walked off, and he went back to practice, and I took a shower, and I left.
And that was it.
That was it at SMU.
End of your career at SMU.
That was the end of the
Do you have any
days at
regrets?
SMU.
Do you have any regrets for, I guess, walking off the field? I mean, in retrospect, was that probably the best move for you to make, or you felt at the time that was the best thing for you to do, or to handle that situation?
Looking back, I don't know if it would have changed at all. If you have years of experience to reflect back on something like that, I know 100% at the time, for me, it was a perfect move.
Okay.
Because you're dealing with people that they definitely don't have the care and compassion for those athletes. You got recruited 2 sports. Yes. I got recruited heavily 1 sport. These individuals are coming to your home, telling your parents, telling your mom and dad, right, hey, I'm going to take care of your little person. I'm taking care of your son. I'm going to mold this young 18-whatever-year-old person into a better man. So these individuals weren't doing that for the kids at SMU. So if I look back and say, what, Bobby Collins, it wasn't for me. I don't think he was good for SMU. Athletes were phenomenal there. People, really good people. Right. But at that time in that situation, I don't think he was best. So me leaving that situation, it was okay.
So you still had aspirations of playing ball. So you had to basically, because during that time, juniors couldn't be drafted into the NFL. So what was your next step after that?
Hired an attorney. They petitioned the NFL for me to leave SMU and to go into the NFL as a junior.
Wow.
So they ended up saying yes. Didn't end up getting drafted. Went as a free agent to Seattle.
Do you think that what you went through kind of let the foundation for that rule or that law to change moving forward? Because that's kind of a big deal, I think,
Yeah.
a very significant deal, because now juniors obviously are allowed to put in for the NFL draft, or at least not necessarily juniors, but third year
Underclassmen.
teams that have gone through players that have played or participated in the program for 3 years.
3
Johnny
years,
Manziel, redshirt,
Walk on, right? Still 3 years, right?
Still 3 years. Do you think maybe you at least, at the very minimum, opened some eyes?
Not at all. I don't think I was that important enough for them
Sure.
to think that this guy is making a difference over here. For me, for some of the guys at SMU and some of the people that are involved with SMU, you know, there was definitely conversation. And some people were, depending on what side of it you're on, were thrilled that, you know, hey, you stood up for something you kind of believed in or thought that was good for you. The other side was calling me on the phone saying, hey, you need to get back out on the field. You know, what are you doing here? And so I stood by what was good for me. Somebody else could have made an entirely different decision.
And it seems like that kind of decision will help empower athletes when they're treated unfairly. It seemed like you were treated incredibly unfairly. You missed a morning practice. They gave you absolutely no notice, didn't pull you aside and tell you this is why we're doing it. They just did it. So it seems like what you did was maybe open some eyes, allowing for some empowerment for some young men that could possibly stick up for themselves, maybe in a different way, but still give them a voice.
Yeah, well, when we did have a meeting, me and the
Coach.
and the defensive coordinator, it was very long, and they told me I could come back. They were going to allow me to come back to play on the team if I was going to be demoted for the entire spring to third or fourth team outside linebacker.
An All-American linebacker.
And
At SMU.
And I would run after every practice.
Yeah.
So that was the deal they were trying to make me. And so I just told them that wasn't for me.
Isn't that crazy? They're making a point on the field, when off the field, it was a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
I mean, just
Well, that's I think with virtually any athlete
Yeah.
nowadays or back then, the coaches are going to try to make a point.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm telling you, John, we can talk to this guy for hours.
yeah, absolutely.
And we've got one more segment. We are gonna talk about paying college athletes. Do you mind sticking around for that last
I'll
segment?
stay.
All right. Don't go anywhere more after this on Inside the Locker Room.
Observe a domesticated human family in their natural habitat, known to their species as the backyard.
Hey, you think I should light it now?
I think it's good.
Yeah?
Oh dear, someone is about to burn a pile of debris that's too tall, which can start a wildfire. Wait, could it be? Blimey, it is.
It's Smokey.
It's Smokey Bear. What a legend.
What's he
Hey,
doing
it's
here?
Smokey. Sorry, it was too high. Right.
Watch as he astutely ensures that there's no wind, and how he removes some of the debris to create a smaller, safer burning pile.
No, you
me to
said,
make it big.
no, you said make it bigger, baby. The bigger, the better.
Take note of our fearless furry friend here, humans.
I appreciate it. Fist bump.
He watching you.
Smokey's done it again.
Bye, Smokey.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
And welcome back to this week's edition of Inside the Locker Room. Gabe Funniest, Johnny Walker, and our fantastic guest, Anthony Beverly, former John Jay and SMU standout. Anthony, again, thank you so very much for taking the time. Last week, Johnny, you and I had a very in-depth conversation on whether or not college athletes should be paid. You kind of had an interesting take on that there should be compensation for them, possibly after they graduate. My whole thing is, if they're making millions and in some cases billions of dollars for these universities, they should get compensated. You brought up some interesting points, and you actually did homework.
I did
this
some
week.
research,
man.
I really did. And a very interesting article that was brought up by Mr. Court Gaines, who was a Business Insider. And basically what he did, which I thought was phenomenal, what he did was he put the college perspective and the professional perspective together. That's what he did. So he looked at the collective bargaining agreement that the NFL players have, and he also looked at the collective bargaining agreement that NBA professional players have.
Based on TV TV revenues.
Based on
dollars
TV
going-
revenues. So what he did was he applied that same concept to college. And so at the university, or excuse me, at the football, the football level. So what he did is he compared what college football players at the University of Texas would make if they had a collective bargaining agreement in place. So we find out through his study, and that's sharing 40% of the revenue. And the professional teams, or in this case the college teams, would get the other 53%. 53? Yeah, 53%. University of Texas football players, and there's 85 scholarship athletes on the team, would make $670,000 apiece if they went with the NFL collective bargaining agreement. $670,000 a year they would make. And they used the same concept with basketball, and at this year, and this was 2016 when they did this study, I believe Louisville won the national championship. So they compared the same NBA agreement where 49% of the revenue went to the NBA players and the other 51% went to the NBA owners. Louisville basketball players, 13 scholarship athletes, they would make $1.7 million.
Yes.
A piece.
My first
if they
question,
had a collective bargaining.
Johnny, my first question is to you. Do you think that paying an 18-year-old kid $663,000 a year, do you think that's a number that's obviously based off of the scientific data and research that you had? Me personally, I think that is wildly too much to pay an 18-year-old kid, but that's just me. Knowing that you as an 18-year-old athlete in Texas, there were 1 million Walker jerseys walking around.
Yes.
They were making money off of your name. Do you think that number is a bit too high, or do you think that they need to come up with a figure? Do you change your thought on they need to pay him something?
Well, I like the concept. And again, the University of Northwestern actually went in the boat about having a union.
Collective bargaining, yes.
And collective bargaining. So what I would do in this position, I do think that's a little bit extreme. I do think it's a little bit too much money. But what I would do is I would lower that percentage. I would lower that collective bargaining percentage to half of what it is in the NFL. So, for example, the student athletes in football, instead of getting 47% of the revenue, they would get 23.5% of the revenue, which would decrease that to $335,000, which I think is reasonable. Now, again, I said that money goes into a trust fund. Now, people keep asking, are you?
So you still agree with your trust fund?
Oh,
theory?
The trust fund, it needs to go into a trust fund. But what I wanted people to understand is that if you look at it from a business side of it, and because that's the way colleges do, I don't care what anybody says, they look at it from a financial business. If I'm a college student athlete, well, I want to start looking at it from a business perspective as well. So if we have a collective bargaining agreement in place, I know I'm getting guaranteed some money. And when you talk about how are we going to keep these college athletes in school, well, when you tell me that I'm going to get, as a football player, I'm making $335,000 guaranteed.
Times 4?
Yeah, times 4. Oh, I think I can stay.
I can get my degree.
You know, I'm making $1.7 million as a basketball player. $1.7 million every year going into that trust fund. You know what? I think I can go and stay about 4 years. I think I can stay 4 years.
Anthony,
I think I can do that.
Anthony, my question to you. Obviously, you were at SMU during one of the most tumultuous times in the history of NC2A violations. You were a part of the teams of players that were accepting large sums of money to play football. Now, you brought up an interesting point. Have you seen the 30 for 30? But you brought up an interesting point.
Yeah.
We weren't the only ones doing it. And
No,
we may not have been the only ones. We may not have been the team that was paying the most. Everybody was doing it. SMU, just by virtue of newspaper reporters, they're the ones that got caught. Do you see this type of concept preventing those types of problems, or do you always think teams are going to try and find that way to get ahead of everybody else?
Teams are always going to try to find an advantage, whatever that might be. But I definitely like the idea of paying the trust fund route. The difficulty is probably the various sports are also going to say, I need a little piece of that pie. So TV revenues for football, basketball definitely are the top echelon. The other ones are down the way a little bit.
What do you do for soccer?
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
It
I mean,
makes it
what
makes it
they've
more
always been doing, they're still giving them money. Now there will definitely have to be some things you'd have to tweak because it's based on how much money you make. And there's going to be certain universities that are always going to be the top tier of how much money they make every year. So you're going to have to put a minimum and a maximum on the amount that you'll be able to put in that trust each year. But I'm just letting you know that if I played at the University of Texas, I'd be bringing home $670,000 if I was basing it on the NFL's collective bargaining agreement.
But your assertion is that even though that could be in place, it's not going to stop the problematic activity that's taking place at these universities.
Well, there's still people they all still have alumni.
Yes.
They all still want to be ranked in the top 10. So how do you get the edge? I'm not sure how you do that just by getting the key athletes because it doesn't always work. So they're going to do what they can to still be in the top 10. So what that takes, I'm not 100% sure. But those programs that are in top, they don't want to go anywhere.
Did you ever take a ride in the Trans Am? In Eric
I've
Dickerson's
never been
Trans
in.
Am?
I've seen the gold Trans Am.
You saw the gold Trans
I
Am.
was never taking a ride. There was a Trans Am. It was gold. But I never took a ride in it.
Yeah.
You were around that time when talking about solutions to the problem that were created at schools like SMU, which is illegally providing compensation for athletes.
They had contracts. They had salaries that they were getting.
What do you
I
see?
don't remember salary.
You didn't get one.
I appreciate you saying
But on the
that.
30 for 30,
Really?
we know guys were getting a salary.
Well, you do realize some of those TV shows are embellished, don't you? For TV content.
Well, it couldn't be embellished. Well, let's
just
put
a
it
little
this
bit.
way.
I was just wanting you to
They
know.
got the death penalty.
They did get the death penalty.
So there has to be a reason why. Now, you said, and I agree with you, there were other schools that were doing it because I know they offered me. Other schools offered me. So I know that's definitely going on. But I'm just telling you, SMU, we know this is the reason why they got the death penalty.
SMU messed up. SMU was also winning.
That's true.
I can talk to a buddy of mine
part of that.
their school was not winning.
Right.
The
And nobody paid
NCAA
attention.
could
They
care
were
less
trying just
about
as
that.
much.
They wasn't even paying
So
attention.
when
right.
you're beating teams that you don't typically beat, people do start asking questions.
Oh, you're right. You're
So
absolutely right.
there's a distinction, or there is a little bit of difference because SMU had success on the field,
Well,
so it makes a little
part of the problem,
difference.
when you got two of the best running backs that come and be in the same backfield, and Eric Dickerson and Craig James, I mean, that's going to throw a red flag up right off the bat. People were already looking at that already. How are you going to get two of the top running backs to be in the same backfield at the same time, to come to little old SMU?
Ron Meyer.
Oh, he did his work.
He's a good coach. Amazing coach.
Definitely did his work.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up this week's edition of Inside the Locker Room. Before we sign off, though, any final thoughts on your...
I had a good time. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad I got to tell a little bit of a story from way back when.
Absolutely.
But appreciate what you do, and thanks for having me on the show.
Fantastic.
No problem.
Johnny,
Thank
any
you for
final
being
thoughts
here.
for this week's show?
To show me the money. That's what I want. Show me the money. I want to see it. We definitely have to start preparing people and letting them know that college players are almost like professional athletes, and we need to get rid of that amateur title that you've been giving them. Yes.
My final thought is I wasn't good enough to get a dime to play college football. I think I told you I got unlimited chicken biscuits at the local Hardee's. That's what I got.
I get my $335,000. We'll definitely go get some chicken biscuits, and we'll throw in some extra large fries too. So nothing to worry about.
Great job, guys. That's going to wrap up this week's edition of Inside the Locker Room for our wonderful guest, Anthony Beverly, and my co-host, Johnny Walker. I'm Gabe Faria saying, see you on the field.